And we'll call the meeting to order at 6:30. This is a Zoom meeting of the Ashburnham, actually now the Ashburnham Select Board. And any votes we take tonight will be done by roll call. And before we get an approval of the agenda, I just want to make note of one thing. On the agenda, we have listed an executive session. That is not going to happen. We're in the midst of contract negotiations. It was put down as a placeholder, and there are no updates on the contract, so we will not be having an executive session tonight. Having said that, can I get an approval of the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as written, minus the section for executive session.
I'll second that.
All right, moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meissner, yes.
Very good. Next up is citizens' comments. Do we have any comments from anybody that's on the meeting tonight that's of an item that's not on the agenda?
I might as well chime in. Marshall Dennis. My comments pertain to the municipal vulnerability preparedness report, draft report that was issued by Park Corporation to the MVP core team, of which Brian is a member. And hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it. As you know, I've sent comments, my comments on the report to all of you. They weren't all particularly pleasant, but be that as it may. Also, Bill, back in late April, you had forwarded a comment email to PAR and others saying that based on your participation in the last listening session on a previous draft report, that you didn't believe that the report accurately represented our, meaning the town's, needs, and that the board should be provided more time to review the report. So far, I don't think the board has considered the report or its subsequent report, which is a local hazard mitigation plan. So if you have comments, or now is the time. If you don't have access to the most recent report, I will provide that to you. I don't think it has anything to do with the public comment period being closed, or as per April. I mean, after all, the board is the client, so I think it can provide comments whenever it darn well feels it needs to. So again, I've provided my comments. I know that PAR is in the process of, attempting to respond to those comments. The more I look at it, the report, the more comments I have. But nonetheless, if the board has comments, they can send them to me, I'll compile them, or they can send them directly to Park Corporation.
Marshall, did they give us any kind of a deadline as to when we had to have any additional comments in?
No, they did not. They just said the sooner the better. After all, the contract ends at the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. And everything needs to be wrapped up by that date. So that gives us what, 6 weeks maybe? Okay. And so I would say maybe the 17th, by the end of the month, if you had comments. Again, you're the client. I don't think it matters when the comments come in. So I would
Marshall, I sent my individual comments in, not as a member of a board, but as a resident, because I was under the impression that it needed to be received by that deadline in April. And knowing that the board was not meeting, I just sent mine in. I did not share them with anybody.
That's okay.
but they are there.
Okay, they were sent to PAR?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So be it, but if anyone else, again, I sent it to the Open Space and Recreation Committee, to the board, but again, if you don't have access to the most recent draft, please let me know and I will get it to you. And all I can say is the sooner your comments can come forth to me and or PAR, the better. That's it.
Marshall, I can't honestly tell you that I've seen that second report. So could you go ahead and send that to me?
I will send it. I will send it to the entire. I will send it to the entire board.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. So yeah, it's definitely Marshall. Thank you.
Yeah, I know the MVP court team received it, i.e. Brian and Plant, Chris Conrad, Randy Williams, et cetera. But I will make sure that the board has it.
Thank you.
Indeed, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Appreciate your efforts.
So if I
Anybody
might go-
else?
Yeah, well, Marshall's still on. Marshall, they're trying to get a second public session on May 25th.
Right.
So just to let you know, there's still another public session that needs to come out of that. I believe it's going to be the 25th. I'm waiting for confirmation on that today or tomorrow morning or such.
Well, and all I can say to that is that all the more reason that the board has a chance to review the report prior to the listening session. And I know that this is a revised session, Brian, because you were otherwise occupied.
Correct.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
tried to do it on the 20th. I wasn't going to be around the 20th.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. I will forward everybody the report and we'll go from there. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Marshall.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. Next up is open meeting violation. So on July 22nd, 2020, the Select Board and the Stevens Memorial Library received a complaint from the Freedom for Religion Foundation regarding an alleged unconstitutional religious display on the playground equipment in Winchester Park. On July 22nd, 2020, the Select Board received an email communication from Town Administrator Brian Doheny, making the Select Board aware of the situation and their recommendation for a possible solution. On July 23rd, 2020, myself and Rosemarie Meisner responded to the email as reply all. On August 21st, 2020, the town clerk, Michelle Johnson, received a public records request from Lindsay Butler of 24 East Ridge Road in Ashburnham, Mass. Regarding this event. The requested information was provided. On August 31st, 2020, Ms. Butler notified the Ashburnham town clerk and the chairman of the Select Board at the time, Leo Janssens, of a formal complaint for a violation of the open meeting law. On September 30th, 2020, Ms. Butler filed a complaint with the Massachusetts Attorney General's office alleging an open meeting violation by the Select Board. On April 28th, 2021, Deborah Phillips, Ashburnham Town Council, received a ruling from the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office concluded an open meeting violation had occurred, but it was an unintentional violation. The public release of this information and the inclusion of this document and the additional documents that we're going to make available in the minutes of this meeting constitutes compliance with the Attorney General's office findings. The Select Board will have no further comment on this event and consider the matter closed. So along with this statement that I've just read, there are 16 pages of documents that include the information that we originally received all the way down through the complaint from Ms. Butler, as well as the letter from the Attorney General outlining the violation. So all that information will be included in our meeting packet, which will be up at the next Board of Selectmen's meeting for approval. Okay, next up is a appointment to the Cultural Council. So we'd received an application a short time ago. Let's see, from Michelle Salvucci, requesting that she be appointed to the Cultural Council. Would anybody offer me up a motion to appoint Michelle to the Cultural Council.
I move that we appoint Michelle to the Cultural Council.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the appointment?
Yes, did Michelle provide her resume or letter of interest with the application as requested?
I have not seen it. If it came into the Cultural Council, I'm not aware of it, but I haven't seen any additional documentation with that information.
So, I mean, it's requested in the application, so hey, you're the chair. I don't know, Ms. Salucci, does anybody? I have no idea.
I do not.
I
Brian,
had
do you have-
received an email. They thought I was still chairman and it came from the Cultural Council with her name and recommending her. And then I forwarded that to the chairman so that it could be included in the agenda. But there were no attachments with it.
So as liaison, I did send an email to Rebecca Sinclair, the chair, requesting that information. I haven't received anything.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm willing to move forward without that information. I know the Cultural Council is in desperate need of membership. And based on the fact that the email came through them, I think I'm going to have to rely on them that they vetted this individual and that they in fact will meet the needs of what they're trying to accomplish on the Cultural Council. So we do have, it's been moved and seconded. Let's call for a vote. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the consideration. All right, up next is the Planning Board appointment for an associate member. So Section 6.9 of the zoning bylaws provides for the appointment of an associate planning board member. 6.9 reads as follows. The Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen jointly may appoint an associate member as provided under MGL Chapter 48, Section 9. The Planning Board chairperson may designate an associate to sit on the board for the purposes of acting on special permit applications in the case of absence of any part of the planning board member or in the event of a vacancy on the board. The term of the associate member shall be 3 years. Associate members may be removed by cause by the planning board upon written charges and after a public hearing. Vacancies shall be filled for unexpired terms in the same manner as in the case of original appointments. On May 12th of this year, the planning board voted to recommend to the select board Roger Hoyt be appointed as the associate member of the planning board for a 3-year term through April of 2024. As you know, Roger just left the board as the chairman. Skip Nolan had previously been the associate member. Roger was the only person that put an application in for that position. So would anybody be interested in giving me a motion to approve that appointment?
I move that we approve the appointment of Roger Hoyt as the associate member of the planning board.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's call for the vote. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Excellent. Next up, Brian, your town administrator's update.
Thank you. So we're looking at open town hall. I'll start with that. There's been some words from the governor and CDC and whatnot. So we're looking to open town hall on the 1st of June. And we're also discussing with the library. They have their trustees meeting tomorrow. So I'll hear back from them tomorrow on what their plan is. But town hall plans to open on June 1st, barring any unforeseen cases or events in town. Also, I want to thank everyone who attended the annual town meeting. I know that's on the agenda later. Again, as Marshall's point, I just want to kind of remind everyone the MVP, the second public session is May 25th. And as Bill mentioned, we're moving forward with all the union contracts. So that those discussions are ongoing now. Another thing that's happened is Neshoba Valley Board of Health. They've opened a Moderna vaccination clinic in Devens. walk-ins are welcome. And you can also do the appointment through VaxFinder at Mass.gov. You have to be 18 years and older because it is the Moderna vaccine. But if you're looking for it, you can go there and get it. Another thing is I have a letter from Cushing supporting the police full-time officer for fiscal 2022. That'll be $117,000, 100. So thank them for their support. The Ashburnham Winchton Joint Water Authority received an award from the Commonwealth for outstanding performance and achievement. So I want to thank them for all that they do over there. Sometimes those that get out there too much, so just want to make them aware that we do recognize them and all the work they do. I'm discussing with Parks right now to have the summer concerts. It looks like we're going to have the summer concert series. Working out the final details right now with the Parks and Rec Department, but it looks like that some of that series, if not 7 of the events, will probably be going forward. Also, from the state level on budgets, the Senate Ways and Means Committee approved their portion of the budget. It has matched all the other numbers, which is basically leveling funding what they gave us this year. So that's promising. There's still 2 more hurdles to go. It has to go through the conference committee and then signed by the governor. So we're not there yet, but at least they're moving forward with that. And that's about all I have for all my stuff. Any questions on any of that?
Nothing for Brian?
We'll let him off easy tonight.
Excellent. All right, Brian, thank you very much. Appreciate the update. All right, up next is the community host agreement for Green Ventures. I think the board has received, I think it came out today, a copy of the host community agreement between the town of Ashburnham and Green Ventures. And I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Sure. So Chris Frost is on here. So Chris, I want to thank you for being here. Chris and I, went back and forth a little bit on this, but he was pretty much in agreement with that. We got it through Debbie Phillips, and Deb Phillips was in agreement. It's the same setup that we have for Evo Kana. So we're treating everyone the same in town. And I appreciate Chris. We had some conversations on the phone, a few emails back and forth, and it went pretty smoothly considering the magnitude that it could be. So I want to thank him for that. And I open up for any questions. I'll open up for any questions.
Members of the board, any questions of either Chris or Brian regarding this host community agreement?
No, I don't have any questions, Brian, but I think it would be interesting for people who are watching the meeting to just get a very quick highlight of the host agreement, like what's included in it, so folks understand.
Sure. So the host community is a 5-year agreement. It has to be the impact to the town. So there's up to 3% impact. There's some limitations on up to $125,000 of impact fee. There's $20,000 for legal impact fees. It's a distribution, it's not a retail. So it's a grow facility, not a retail. So it doesn't have a lot of the other caveats, which you'll see in one of the upcoming ones. Those are the big things. And, we hope to see, continued growth in business in town. So we think it's a good agreement for both sides. And it's up on 3 Young Road. That's where Chris's place is. That's where this will be. He'll have to come before you for a special permit because it's residential. That'll be coming very shortly. That's going through building in those committees right now. And there may be a condition on it that he gets the license for, from the state, but, we're working through that right now, but that should be in front of you very shortly.
So the town doesn't receive any of these fees until he gets a license from the state, right?
That is correct.
Correct.
So Brian, I don't know if you want to answer this, or maybe I'll direct it to Chris. So I know this is probably a difficult question for you to answer, but assuming that this agreement goes through tonight, what's the timeline for you to get your license from the state? Is that a year away, 2 years away? Is there an average time that it's taken to make that happen?
Yeah, from the time we apply until the state board reviews is supposed to be 90 days. It has been running longer than that. So after we get the host community agreement in place, the zoning in place, we can actually submit the application. So we should have that done by the end of the month. And from what I've seen from the state, it could take up to 6 months to get a provisional license. Now, once you have the provisional license in hand, then we actually have to build the building. So that could, depending on, where building costs are and where contractors are and lining everything up, that could be another 6 to 9 months. Then we go through a final inspection. Once we have everything in place, we notify the state. That can take up to a month for the final inspection, final licensing. So my best guess at this point in time would be a minimum of a year from now.
Okay.
Until final licensing.
That sounds about right. I think that the other folks are going through similar situations trying to make that happen.
Especially, COVID threw a monkey wrench into everything. It really did. It slowed everything down, slowed down, the state, the building trades. There's been a lot of hoops that, everybody's jumping through. So a conservative estimate would be minimum of a year. I would say maximum 18 months.
Okay, very good. Any other questions of Chris or Brian on this?
Chris, this is Marshall Dennis.
Hi, Marshall.
Within that 12 to 18 month period, I think you stated that the building would have to go up. Is that?
Yes,
true?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Before we can build, we actually have to have a provisional license in hand from the state.
Okay.
You don't want to have a building started and then, they find something that goes awry and then you're kind of stuck. So
Okay.
until we have a license in hand, then we'll, start the building process.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, would somebody be interested in giving me a motion to approve the host community agreement between the town of Ashburnham and Green Ventures dated May 18th, 2021?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Okay, great. All right, Chris, there you go.
No, thank you.
And we're gonna have to, do we have to have all 3 signatures on this, Brian, or will 2 do?
I think 2 will do, but Chris also needs that special permit. So he's not gonna, really need this until he gets that. He needs both together in order to submit to the state. But we can
Okay.
get 2 signatures on it. If Chris wants it, then he can have it then. If not, we can get all 3 for him eventually.
Okay, very good. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everyone, Brian, members of the board, Mary, you guys have been great to work with. Just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I put on there just an item about town meeting follow-up. I don't have anything particular. I just wanted to see if any of the board members or anybody else had any comments about how they think that it went, things that we needed to do differently, needed to do better. Just a general debrief on what we thought town meeting went. I thought it went well. I think the presentation that Rosemary had put together was excellent and Brian had put together, that was excellent. I think it answered a bunch of questions for people. Next year or the next meeting, we'll look at ways to, provide some different information or provide it better, sooner, along those lines. But anybody have any comments about how they think the meeting went?
I agree with you. I've heard nothing negative. That night, there was no heavy debate on anything. It all just went very well.
Looked
Yeah,
good when I was on Zoom. I wasn't at the meeting in person, but it looked great.
What about from your perspective, Brian?
Yeah, I thought it went well. You know, I might have rushed mine a little bit. Maybe I have to pace myself a little more. But I thought the attendance was well. I thought everyone there was well educated. You know, they asked the right questions. They came afterwards and talked a few comments. I thought it went well also.
All right, anything from the public? Anybody that was there that wanted to throw anything out? Okay, excellent. And that's all we needed to hear. Well, good job by everybody, and we'll look to always improve going forward. Next up, I wanted to have something on there about the town website. You know, we've been through the process with that committee that we had that made some approvals to us. We haven't really taken any action on that yet. We're going to be taking some action in the not too distant future. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was, is there a way that the either department heads, the boards, committees, commissions, anybody that's got anything on our website, if we could go through a process of calling through that information and removing things that aren't needed anymore, aren't up to date, update the files, to start that process moving to get rid of some of the information that we have on there that we really don't need to have on there. So I wanted to get the board's thoughts on if they agreed, disagreed, and for Brian and Mary, if there's a path forward for us to start that process.
I'll start. I totally agree with what you're saying. I had some inside information when the committee began. They sent letters or emails out to the various people. They didn't get a great response. So my feeling is to go along with what you just suggested, that we as a board and Brian from his perspective, send out requests to all of the people that we appoint or are responsible for to be sure that we get the response and that they get to work on this. It's not something to just put in the pending file.
Rosemary?
I had a suggestion on what if we called a meeting of the chairs? And we had a meeting with them and we basically did it real time. Tell them to come prepared, that the expectation is that someone, the chair attend or their representative, see how many people show. I mean, we had that appointed committee handbook group. We didn't get everybody, but there was, you know, probably about 10 people there. That's better than nobody replying, right? So I don't know, particularly if it was Zoom, I think we'd get people. I know Zoom's probably coming to a close, but you know, maybe it's worth thinking about.
That's a good
Either that or the
suggestion.
liaisons could really push for it.
I think your suggestion's better because that'll put everybody right on the spot. And I think that's what they need.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is that I like that idea when we go, whether we do that or however we choose to do it, we give them a date certain that the information has to be back. I mean, we're not suggesting that they go in and take the information down, but we need to be able to have the information to give to Donna. She's just not going to randomly go in there and start making decisions about, you know, boards, committees, and commissions about what should be there and what shouldn't be there. But we have to take the first step of trying to make the changes we need to make there to make that a more user-friendly site. So then let me think about that. I like the idea of the chairs meeting, and again, we could do that on Zoom, so nobody'd have to leave their house. So let's.
You know, another, when you just mentioned to give the information to Donna, I don't know if we're in the right phase yet, but maybe Brian can look for somebody in the town hall that can assist her and have the same authorities to get into the website. Because I think part of it is she's inundated with so much work. That's part of how some of the stuff is falling behind. So if she's the backup to everybody in the town hall, and maybe now she needs a backup.
Sure, I can look at that and definitely get onto the department heads, let them, you know, screenshot their pages, have them go through, make sure they're all updated with what information they want on there. But yeah, as a backup in town hall. I've got a couple ideas and I'll talk to Mary tomorrow on that.
I do have authority and I do back up Donna when she's on vacation for postings and whatnot.
But how about on a regular basis, given whatever your schedule may be?
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
Leo, if you remember back to the report that we got from the website review committee, one of the things that they recommended in there, and I think strongly recommended, was that we either get somebody else or provide the necessary support to Donna to make sure this is part of their job on a daily basis. You know, in defense of Donna, as you said, she's got a lot of things going on. It's not her normal activity, if you will. So I know I've spoken to Brian a couple of times about this. I know he's exploring a couple of options as we get into the next fiscal year of ways that we may be able to manage that website more efficiently. So, you know, sometime over the next few weeks, we're gonna get some more information. I think we'll be able to come up with a decision as to how we're gonna move forward with that. But right now, between Donna and Mary, I think that we can accomplish, you know, like I said, make the first couple of steps in getting some of this information cleaned up. And I think that'll be helpful when, you know, we make the decisions to revamp that site.
Yeah, that'll give us the foundation that we need.
Right. And I just, you know, I do not want that information from that committee to linger, because next thing you know, it'll be September and we won't have done anything. So we need to stay with this and make sure that we see the progress that we need. That's a critical piece for us as a town about how we disseminate information to the public. And right now, it's a gigantic pain in the butt to find something there. And I just, you know, and then, you know, we've got the bylaw review committee going on, and that's going to be a little bit longer out, but that whole section is going to get cleaned up. So, you know, when that information finally is ready to go, it's got to be on a brand new site that is much more user friendly going forward. So, okay, excellent. Next up, and again, this was just
If I may, Bill,
sure,
just
go ahead, Marshall.
speaking for the Conservation Commission, you know, the board selects a date by which, you know, we need to come to the table with recommendations, and we'll be there.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, next up, boards/commissions list update. So this is something we started a few months back, and I'd say Mary got it about 95% ready to go, maybe a little bit better than that. And then we backed off a little bit because we obviously had elections, board reorganizations and things like that. So I just wanted to throw it back out on the table. I've got the most recent document that Mary sent out. I think I'm going to push it out to the board sometime over the next couple of days. And with Brian and Mary, I would just ask you to get a look at that list. If you have to reach out to those folks to find out if there's a new chair, like the planning board's got a new member, you know, things like that. I really want that list updated, 100% accurate, so we can get that out to the boards and commissions so we can communicate. We know who's doing what, you know, it's a good document that I think we've needed for a long time. So I would say that I would like to see that document completed by our next meeting on June 7th so that we can get a look at it. I don't think we need to really vote on it, but just look it over, make sure it's where it wants to be, get that done, and then we can move on and get that off the task list. Does that sound reasonable?
yes, we'll do.
Okay, perfect. All right, next up is, I know I'm going to mess this up, LQBTQ proclamation request, which came in from a citizen. And I received an email from Claire Duker about placing this item on the agenda. And the select board was sent the email that she originally sent to me, as well as a couple other attachments that I had forwarded over the last few days. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire. How can we help you, Claire?
Let me unmute. Here we go. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to present this proclamation. I hope the select board will accept it for the town of Ashburnham. As you may be aware, the month of June has been adopted around the Commonwealth, the country, and indeed around the globe as Gay Pride Month. It's a month set aside to honor the diversity of our communities and appreciate the contributions that LGBTQIA people have made to our society. By declaring our support for our LGBTQIA neighbors, we show them that we respect who they are and accept them as equal partners in our quest to make this a welcoming community for all of our residents, our relatives, friends, and visitors. I believe the proclamation before you upholds that ideal. Living in an outwardly accepting community has real implications. It allows its residents to live openly and honestly as to who they are. They feel a sense of community in a town that they call home, and young people feel nurtured and appreciated as they grow into their adulthood. On the flip side, living in an unwelcoming, non-supportive environment has dire consequences. Many who are ostracized for being LGBTQIA have attempted suicide. The suicide rate for these youths is higher than amongst heterosexual youths. The 2020 National Survey on LGBTQ youth showed that 40% of these youth in the United States have seriously considered suicide in the past year. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth are almost 5 times as likely to have actually attempted suicide compared to heterosexual youth. Suicides are also high amongst transgendered males. More than half of transgendered male teens who had participated in a recent American Academy of Pediatrics survey reported attempting suicide in their lifetime, while 30% of transgendered female teens said they attempted suicide. Young people are also disproportionately prone to experience homelessness. Of the youth in this country who are homeless, 40% identify as being LGBTQIA. And it's not just young people who are affected by not residing in a safe and affirming environment. Anxiety and depression exist in adults as well when they are not welcomed as full human beings in their own community. Many go into hiding, the proverbial closet, are fearful of their neighbors because of their own identity or that of their offspring. They may not participate in local activities nor volunteer for their community. They feel unwelcome and unwanted. I would like to think that Ashburnham accepts all of its residents, no matter what their background or their identity, and that we accept each other as equals. We all have a capacity to contribute to the civic well-being of our town. Diverse people bring different perspectives with them. Those different perspectives can help solve the problems and challenges that the town faces now and into the future. If we invite everyone to become a part of our community, we're better for it. Again, thank you for your time and allowing me to bring up this topic tonight. In case you were unaware of its significance, today, May 17th, is International Anti-Homophobia and Anti-Transphobia Day. Today also marks the 17th anniversary of marriage equality here in Massachusetts. I hope you've had a chance to read the proposed proclamation, and I am here to answer any questions or whatever other discussion needs to take place.
Thank you, Claire. So I've shared some emails back and forth with Claire, a couple of phone calls. My thoughts on this were in getting the proclamation out to people that I'm really not interested in voting on this tonight, but I wanted to get it on the table and have a discussion about it and then bring it back our meeting on June 7th for disposition at that time. I think it's fair to give people time to have a conversation about this and ask questions. So I'm going to read the draft proclamation so that those that obviously haven't seen it will know what we're talking about. It's not very long, but it certainly is, in my estimation, significant and important. So it would be a select board proclamation, whereas Ashburnham is a community that values diversity and inclusion and is committed to equal rights and opportunities for all of its residents. And whereas Ashburnham recognizes the important contributions of its LGBTQIA residents to the town's history, culture, economy, and civic life. And whereas we celebrate the accomplishments of the LGBTQIA community towards securing important rights and freedoms, often through struggle and adversity. And whereas we remain vigilant against continued oppression and discrimination against the LGBTQIA community and against any effort to overturn these accomplishments. And whereas we acknowledge the need for education and awareness to end the discrimination and prejudice and recognize that the Ashburnham Westminster School District is helping our students and our community with this endeavor. And whereas we affirm our support for the LGBTQIA residents and stand with them to protect their civil rights and the ability to live openly without fear. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Ashburnham, do hereby proclaim June 2021 as LGBTQIA Pride Month. Leo, Rosemarie, your thoughts, questions, concerns?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Claire for bringing forward this proclamation. It clearly was a tremendous amount of work. And thank you for promoting this effort, which, you know, is long overdue. I mean, Pride Month for the month of June, this is not just a local thing. It's not just an Ashburnham thing. Many towns and cities in Massachusetts celebrate June as Pride Month. And not only in Massachusetts, but it's a national Pride Month celebration in many cities and towns across the nation. So I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention, Claire.
Leo, anything?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Anybody in the public have any questions or comments? Okay, then seeing none, then as I stated earlier, we will let this sit until next select board meeting, which will be on June 7th, and welcome any comments, conversation, whatever it is around this. And Claire, again, thank you again for taking the time and effort and bringing it forward. And we'll take it up in a couple of weeks. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Okay, next up is the Economic Development Sign Project. And I was expecting Kirby, Lacey, or Phil Papuzian to be here. They're nowhere in sight though, right, Mary?
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. There's Kirby.
I'm here. Sorry, I've been off camera because I'm out taking care of farm things. So
Oh,
apologies.
excellent. Excellent. No, that's fine. So later in the day today, I sent over to the board some information. We've received information on this 2 or 3 different times from Economic Development and Kirby and Phil. So I put it all together in one document and sent it over, which people should be in possession of. So we talked about this at a prior board meeting, and what Economic Development is asking if the board would approve the installation of a 2-sided sign out at the intersection of 101 and 119. So that's what we're here to talk about. Kirby, anything you want to throw in there, talk about this?
I think 2 just kind of quick points. One is obviously the board needs to make a decision about where we're at with this. We started this project pre-COVID, and finances for businesses in the town were obviously a little bit different at that time. But I do think we think this is an important place for us to kind of test out some of these wayfinding signs, which we know are an important way to kind of capture visitors into our downtown. And you know, we really thought about the 119, 101 intersection because there are so many folks that come in that area for outdoor recreation that have no clue that if they travel down the road, there's a really cool, quaint little downtown with lots of businesses that they could grab some food at, or a beer, or patronize. And so our thought was around testing out kind of a signage like this to see if it helps with traffic in the town. Obviously we would love for our town to have beautiful signage at all the entrance points. It's very expensive, we found, even after doing multiple quotes for that. So we felt better about kind of doing one and testing that before we moved forward with additional signage. And so Phil did a lot of heavy lifting on this in doing research on kind of best placements, best practices, a whole slew of things, and a small committee worked with him. And I'm just here to answer questions if folks have them, and I'm just happy to have the information out there. And if this isn't the right time, then it's not the right time. But we've put all the information together so that when it is the right time, we can move.
Well, Kirby, there's never a good time to spend 10 grand, but that's just the way it goes. Questions from the board, comments, concerns? Actually, before anybody says anything, if you're going to say anything, Kirby, do you know what the actual number is we're talking about here? Because I've got a bunch of different quotes in front of me, and I see.
Yeah, I think the kind of best number that we got, so we did multiple quotes. There's a couple of different kind of price points. So it is between 10 and 14, but I would say 12 to 14 is what we're really looking at. And again, the sign's going to match the sign that's in the downtown with some what they call like riders that hang underneath it with the information kind of pointing people towards downtown. And that was the quote that we got from, I think, 3 different businesses, 2 that we put forward as kind of official quotes to you all in the package.
So that's going to mimic the sign that's on Town Hall lawn, correct?
So 14 is the dollars.
You were breaking up, Kirby. You got to run that again.
Sorry, yes, that is correct.
So we're looking at a sign that replicates the one on Town Hall lawn. It's a 2-sided sign, and it would be placed out at the intersection of 119 and 101 with arrows pointing to downtown. So Leo, Rosemary, questions, concerns, thoughts?
We've still got the money in the economic development money, correct?
It's been moved to the advisory board.
Okay. I'm in favor of it. And like she said, it's been going on pre-COVID. I remember getting some of this information months ago. And I think with all the work done, that the 101, 119 location is the best location, at least in the beginning. And I'm willing to vote yes on it.
Rosemary?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Do we know if the location where we're going to put this is legit? Can we put it there?
That's a great question, Rosemary. And I think we have all the information in there as far as the direct follow-up that needs to happen. But obviously the Economic Development Commission isn't acting as like a ward of the town to talk to folks. So, I think we'd be happy to sit down and kind of run through that and see what's plausible around that. But all of the kind of discussions, information gathering, et cetera, has happened.
Yeah, so according to one of the documents, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Roy, I guess, owns the property out there. But then there's also easements and things like that with the road. So I think it would have to be worked out. And he's indicating that he doesn't have difficulty with it as long as it's maintained. But I'm sure we would probably have to get legal involved to see what the ramifications are if you're putting a town sign on private property and all the things that go along with that. So my goal tonight is to see if we can, move this project forward. Obviously, there's follow-up that's going to happen. But so are you? What do you think the number is, Kirby? You're looking for?
I think 14. I would feel good about 14 because that is the highest end of things, and I don't want us to fall short in the budget. And things are very different in the last few months with building supplies. So
Rosemary, what else you got?
Well, the other thing too, it's a state highway. And I don't know whether or not there are requirements on a state highway that would preclude us from putting a sign like that on 119. So that would be another question to look at. Sometimes the materials that are actually the sign is made of, they have to be reflective. I know that just from, rail trail and trail signage. The other question I had, because this is coming up in our a task that I've asked economic development to look at, the community one-stop letter of expression, which is a requirement for some of the grant funding. Wayfinding is part of that. Now, with that said, the group that actually distributes the cash for wayfinding is the Mass Downtown Initiative. So this is clearly not downtown. But we're working with that group, Kirby, through our LRRP. So could we ask the question of the LRRP people, is this something that grant funding is available for or not? I mean, I just would love to have that answered,
Yeah, and that's
I
something
do-
we have put on the table to them, and I think is one of the objectives that the LRP people are working on is around some recommendations and possible funding avenues for the wayfinding signs. That project is supposed to be concluded by August. So my hope would be that we would have those answers kind of concurrently around this. And obviously, if we can secure grant funding for this, that's the way that we'll go. Sorry, that is a goose in the background screaming. Obviously, we're happy to look at that. I'm happy to help write grants, as I've done in the past for the community around that piece. But really, I think tonight is about if we're going to move forward with this, and if there is not grant funding available, do we feel comfortable putting the funds towards this as something to help bring visitors into the downtown?
My point is, and I'm supportive of welcome signs. I'd like to put them at every single entrance to town. But I do think there's a budget freeze. I don't think it's been lifted, Brian. And I just want to make sure that if there's additional or alternative funding that we can actually apply for it. Personally, from my reading of the wayfinding grants, that this would not be covered by grant funding. So that's why I wanted to ask you, Kirby, if you felt the same thing. I believe it's only wayfinding downtown.
I do feel the same as well, although, I'm just going to be honest that there's a ton of kind of funding that is coming out because of the pandemic with a lot of the downtown initiative stuff that I don't think there is a clear read on what those grants are going to be. So I do want to be completely upfront and honest about that. I also want to be upfront and honest that, we're having constant conversations about this at Economic Development Commission. And if something were to come available, we would 100% move in that direction and support, going after that for this project.
So,
I'm not a mind reader around kind of where things are going to be. The current ones that are out there would not qualify for this.
Correct. That's my read too. There isn't anything currently available.
So Brian, from the funding perspective, so we did move that economic development money into the advisory board's accounts because of the things that we needed to do there. I know we've potentially expended some of that money on the lighting for downtown with the Complete Streets project. So there should be probably $25,000 left of that piece. Would that be something you would be comfortable with potentially releasing for this project, the 14?
Wait, time out. Don't forget, we've allocated some of that funding. It's tied up as a match for the rail trail feasibility study if we receive it in June. So I don't know how much is really available, Brian, do you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It depends on that rail trail, how that works out, when that funds have to be paid out, if they're this year's budget or next year's budget. You know, that's the big decider there, because that would take up just about everything that's left in there.
Okay. So what's our path forward on this? We could take a vote, I suspect, in support of the project, the support of the recommendation from an economic development, pending resource allocation for the project. Is that wording that would work for you, Brian?
That would work for me.
Leo?
I was thinking pending available funding.
Okay. Rosemary?
Yep, fine.
Yeah, because my concern is that, you know, economic development did a lot of work on this, and I just hate to have stuff kicking around for, you know, months and months and months. I mean, they even looked at traffic study data and things like that. So it's some pretty complete information that we've received. And there are a lot of things in flux right now with grants and budgets and things like that. So if, would somebody be interested in giving me a motion that would support the proposal from economic development to purchase a two-sided sign for installation at Route 119 and 101 pending funding sourcing?
And pending the logistics involved, as discussed, the legalities and the permissions and so forth.
Okay, is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Okay, so moved by Leo. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any additional
I'll second.
discussion? Everybody's clear on what we're doing. We're basically approving the project pending, you know, the site review and finding funding to actually do this. Everybody's good with that? Okay.
If I may, is there a map or plan that indicates where this sign is exactly supposed to be located?
There is. I can send it over to you, Marshall. Basically, if you are heading out 101, when you get to 119, on the left-hand side of the road at the intersection of 119 and 101. So it would be, you know, I guess horizontal to 119 is the location. But there is a document that I have that's got a picture of it and things like that that I could gladly send over to you.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, then I'll call the vote. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Okay, Kirby, thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you sticking with while I was outside.
Thank you, Kirby.
Okay, next up is the Selectmen's meeting schedule for the coming months. I know everybody got a copy of this just for the public's information. We're looking at meeting Monday, June 7th, Monday, June 21st as regular scheduled meetings, and then Tuesday, July 6th, Monday, August 2nd, and Tuesday, September 7th. But in conversations I've had with Brian, there's actually probably going to be more stuff going on in June as we look at closing the fiscal year. We've got some free cash that we need to do some allocations on that may in fact require a special town meeting for us to have in June. So Brian, do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure. So we have free cash available. Now that hopefully we're done with the winter, we need to allocate that free cash to snow and ice. If you don't do it by June 30th, they'll have to hit it on the recap next year. I don't want them to hit it on the recap and affect next year's tax rate. I'd rather hit it out of this year's budget. And there's a couple other small little items that have come across that we want to take care of also.
So do you have some proposed times or dates for those now, or you want to hold off on that?
I'll hold off on that, but I'd be looking at mid-June, probably before that 21st meeting. I'd
Okay.
probably be looking to have something between the 7th and the 21st. So hopefully that, you know, second full week of June, the 14th through the 18th, somewhere in that range, I'm hoping. I'll know snow and ice then. I should have the department heads give me back their budget numbers to see if I have enough money within the budget to transfer with advisory and board of selectmen. If not, I'll have to go from free cash to get additional funds.
Okay, so Leo and Rosemary, I don't think this requires a vote, but I wanted to put it out there and let people know what we were thinking of doing. Do you have any difficulties with what I've proposed?
I'm having trouble finding the email, but we've done this every year for a long time. So I see no issues with it. And it's always the option that we can call a special meeting in between if an issue comes up.
Okay, very good. Rosemary?
Nope, looks good to me.
Okay, then let's go with that plan, and we'll wait to hear back from you, Brian, on anything else that we may need to put in there. All right, next up is approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes we need to approve tonight. Would someone be willing to offer me a motion for the working session minutes of April 9th, 2021?
I move that we accept the minutes of April 9th, 2021.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
And next up would be the working session minutes of April 30th, 2021. And I got to tell you, I've never seen a better set of minutes than those that were taken right there. No, with all due respect, Mary. So, would someone like to offer up a motion to accept those minutes?
I couldn't read shorthand, so I
Oh,
can say,
come on, Leo, that was perfectly typed. There wasn't any typos or anything.
I move that we accept the minutes from April 30th, 2021.
I'll second it.
All right, moved and seconded. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Okay, and last up will be the regular selectmen's meeting of May 3rd, 2021.
I move that we accept the minutes of May 3rd, 2021.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody have anything under other business?
I
I
do.
have a couple things, but
Hearing all the news the past couple days, I would have said this before when you were setting the agenda, but it was the past couple days that brought it to mind. We as a board declared a state of emergency a year ago when all this COVID started. And given what's happening on the state level and the federal level, I would like to make a motion that we rescind the state of emergency that our board voted on a year ago.
okay, so so that's a motion, Leo?
Yes.
All right. Anybody interested in seconding that? I'll second it so we can get it on the table and discuss it. The question that I have is, I know the state is lifting the emergency declaration. Would we want that to coincide with the state's date?
We could do that, or I was thinking even if we rescinded it now, as a town, we're still gonna be obligated to follow whatever the state is dictating. Maybe dictating is a bad word, whatever they're laying out for us to follow.
Brian, your thoughts?
I'm concerned whether the COVID funding, which goes through December 2021, would it impact our ability to purchase certain items under state of emergency? But again, with your discussion with yours and Leo, that that might be a moot point, because once the state pulls us out of it, whether we're in it or not, probably would be a moot point. So.
The Baker announced that the state of emergency for Massachusetts is lifted on June 15th.
Correct.
So I just feel like we should wait until June 15th. I mean, if we want to make a motion saying June 15th, hey, I'm fine with that. I just think we should, to make sure that we're not, as Brian describes, undercutting our ability to be able to qualify for funding. We might even have, grants or something that we're applying for now, or reimbursement. And I just would feel more comfortable aligning with what the state has.
Leo, what do you think?
Nope, that's fine. I'm just thinking of, before we forget that we never made this vote, that we get it up and, be ready to act on it.
So would you consider amending your motion to state that we would end the state of emergency June 15th, 2021 to coincide with the Commonwealth?
Yep, June 15th to coincide with the Commonwealth, and we'll use to coincide so that way if they by chance change their date, we can kind of tag along with that.
Okay, and as the seconder, I will approve that and second that motion. Any other discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Okay, anybody have anything else?
I just had just a quick comment on face coverings because I'm currently in California, and the California governor has lifted restrictions for wearing masks outside, but there still is the right of businesses to require masks in order to receive service. And my understanding is that the face coverings in Massachusetts is going to be lifted on May 29th. So that mask order will take place, but that the state is still advising all non-vaccinated individuals to wear masks. So that's just, it's not a state of emergency thing, but the mask thing is still something that we need to be thinking about on the state level and, all across the country, depending on what state you live in. So I just wanted to make that comment. Here, businesses are really requiring people to wear masks for service, even though the mandate has been lifted. And
Well,
it needs to be, if a business in Ashburnham does that or wherever you are, we need to comply with that with the business owners.
It goes along with
That's
the
just my personal feeling. Okay?
no shoes, no shirt, no service. I mean,
Exactly
been
right. Just because we're lifting a state of emergency doesn't mean that, whatever. I also wanted to ask about the grant that shared streets and spaces. As an FYI, I sent Brian a whole bunch of pictures today of outdoor dining options that are here in where I'm located in Nevada City, California. And they have some really interesting ways of setting up dividers, in order to protect outdoor dining, or coverings that really aren't very expensive at all. I've actually talked to a few people. They're buying stuff at like Tractor Supply. So just a thought. I think, Bill, you're applying for that, or no? Are you?
No, I am definitely applying for that. I've accumulated some information from Brian. I've done some research on my own. We had a Zoom meeting Kirby and I did last week with some folks that are working on that LRP grant or whatever that one is, that has some suggestions there. So the deadline for submittal is Friday. So we'll get it in well in advance. I'll get it to them on Thursday. So it'll be in under the deadline there. But just so people will know, what we're going to be looking at is the focus of these grants is outdoor dining and accessibility for seniors and libraries and kids and things like that. So we're going to be looking at a temporary program that would potentially block off the driveway in front of Town Hall, where we would put up cafe tables and umbrellas, and then a similar setup up at the library between where the playground equipment is and the library is right now, block that off with similar tables and chairs and umbrellas. That would provide space for people to dine in the outdoors, for programming for the library, potentially once the senior center gets open again, potentially for programming for the senior center in front there. And again, it's temporary. So we will be in fact applying for some money to try to purchase those things. And if Brian, if you can forward me those pictures, that would be a good thing. And if I can incorporate some of that, I will.
Will do.
So I guess just for my clarification, when I see outside dining, I see tents and stuff in front of restaurants on their property. But this doesn't have to be on restaurant property, the way you just described it?
Well, there's different grants that are available. One of the things that we had kicked around was, could you do it on private property? And I kind of felt that, well, if you did it on one person's private property and you didn't do it on another, would that be creating, some sort of a conflict situation where you were providing preferential treatment to one business over another? So when you look at the front lawn of Town Hall, it's not uncommon to see people sitting on the lawn. There's 2 benches out there for people to be just sitting on the lawn doing this. So we thought that if we put it in front of Town Hall, that it would provide a space on town property that anybody could utilize anytime. I mean, if you're Dave Hearn's business there and you have some tables and chairs out there now, you don't really want to see the guy who just went to the pizza shop and got pizza coming over, sitting at your tables and chairs that you have for your patrons. So this would kind of take that whole situation out of play with doing it this way versus another way. And then, things that we would include is trash cans and, some potential barriers to prevent traffic from going through there. Yet that still would provide emergency access to the buildings by the fire department should they need to get in there, God forbid that something happened to either one of those buildings. So it would still provide enough flexibility for that to happen as well.
Okay,
So that was the thought. Again, I'm 0 for 2 on these shared street grants, so I don't know if I can take another rejection or not, but I'm willing to take a crack at it and see what happens. So that's where we are with that.
looking at Phil's information on the sign, that's the guy that should write the grant.
Yeah, no, yeah, I don't think Phil's going to be able to pull it off in the next 48 hours though. So, I do have the templates from what we've done before and have a pretty good understanding. And, before we went for projects that were north of $200,000, and this one, while you can still apply for money like that, they're really looking between $5,000 and $50,000. So we think that we can get a multifaceted grant application done that would touch a lot of the same bases, probably for less than $25,000. So we think that would put us in a better position to get funded for it.
That makes sense.
Anything else on new business? So I have a couple of things. We had received an email, and I can't remember who it was from. It could have been from Roger Hoyt. It could have been from Karen Chapman. Actually, it was probably Karen Chapman, about a planning assistance grant application that it's due on May 28th. And Rosemary, this is probably a question directed at you. We had gotten an email from Roger, from Karen, that said, since you are no longer chair of the planning board, who should I contact about submitting a planning assistant grant application for Ashburnham's master plan? Applications are due May 28th. Do we have anything in the pipeline that we should be sending over to them and making an application?
So I believe that the grant is the same grant that we applied for maybe 2 years ago. That would allow us to be able to get the remaining chapters and any chapters that need to be updated completed in the master plan. So that's my understanding. So we do have a lot of chapters that we have not even talked about.
All right, do you know which of those chapters are the most pressing that we haven't done?
Well, we'd wrap the whole thing up. So anything that would be remaining would be wrapped up. So we're completing housing, and economic development is current. We're updating open space and recreation plan. But then we have like a cultural one, land use one, not a land use one, facilities one. I don't know them all on the top of my head, but we probably have like 4 or 5 more chapters that we have to complete. And we've only been going after the big ones, the ones that really impact, development, whether residential or commercial. But, one of them, like I said, is an inventory of all of our facilities and what do we have and what should we be looking at down the road? Either, a new facility or a replacement of a facility.
So in your past experience, when we've applied for these, do we have to spell out exactly what we're looking for, or we just won't say that we're looking to upgrade the facilities section of the master plan and send it off to MRPC?
Karen actually filled it out the last time for us. We didn't even, she, filled out the application form.
That's the right answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I'll reach out to Karen tomorrow and see what's going on there. Brian, you have any thoughts about that? Would facilities be a good one to do?
Yeah, any of the areas that are unaccounted for right now are good to do. As you said, you've hit a lot of the bigger ones, but let's clean up the others too. Cultural, that's not a bad one either for here.
Leo, your thoughts?
I agree with that.
Okay, all right. So then I will reach out to her and see what we need to do. Next up is we received a notification about a hazard mitigation plan. And I think that came from John Hume. And I pulled one of the notes off of there. It said, communities interested in pursuing this grant to update their hazard mitigation plan are strongly encouraged to submit a statement of interest to MEMA ahead of the fiscal year 21 fall funding cycle. You can find links to the statement of interest and da 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 da. So I think we're a little bit behind on our hazard mitigation plans. Is that accurate?
Well, are we doing that as part of the MVP?
I was just going to say, Bill mentioned to me this morning about this one. When I started looking at it, it refreshed my memory that PAR is doing that with the MVP program at this point in time.
Okay, so we don't need to concern ourselves with that, or is there something else, another aspect of hazard mitigation that we could concern ourselves with?
I think we're okay with it, but let me verify that just to make sure. There might be a little piece left, but part of the MVP plan is it has to go to the hazard mitigation thing. That's the final outcome of that.
Okay, all right, very good.
I've got a question on that though. Rosemarie, what was the thing that the fire chief as our emergency director, wasn't there a plan that was behind, or was that something different?
Oh, it's the
Dam
dam,
safety?
the emergency plans on the dams. We have a number of dams that we're not up to date on, and one that we aren't compliant on as far as providing an emergency action plan on, an EAP.
I thought it was an overall emergency action plan. Maybe
No, it's just for the dams.
Okay, my mistake.
He does have one. It's in a draft mode, I believe, for an overall thing that needs to be done. I think for FEMA or one of the agencies, it's being updated.
Now, would that come under this grant?
No.
I don't,
No, the local hazard mitigation plan is, well, if you went to the MVP thing, you might have seen it, right? So we have an old one from back, I think like 2014. And then the select board did not approve it until 2016. So you've seen it, but it has to be updated so many years.
That's the one that I was thinking of.
Right. The emergency action plans are required for each dam, whether it's privately owned or publicly owned, meaning the municipality owns it. For ones that are need just to be updated, that's not that much of a heavy lift, is it, Brian?
no, not for the updating one.
But there's one that we have that we don't have an emergency action plan on. It's one of the knock cakes. And that is a brand new requirement for whatever hazard that dam is at. Previously, it was never required, but now it is required. And I think is it significant hazard, Brian? I can't remember.
I can't, I'm not positive. It's been a little bit since I've looked at that.
Yeah, I don't have my files with me, but it's one of the knock kegs.
Okay, well then I'm not going to worry about that hazard mitigation plan right now because it seems like we've got that covered. So
But just on an emergency action plan, the initial emergency action plan, that's an expensive plan. You know, so when you first have to do that, we need to be looking for grant funding for that. So if that comes up, because that does involve engineers. After you get it, you just update contact information and things like that.
okay, great. Okay, the two other things I wanted to bring up. One of them is Brian and I had talked briefly over the last week and a little bit today about the prospects of going back to in-person Board of Selectmen meetings. And I'm shooting for our next meeting on June 7th to be in person at the Public Safety Building. Brian, do you have any update on that or any thoughts about that?
I'm in agreement with that. I checked with, Larry just to make sure, it's his building and he's good with it and I'm good with it. So if you guys are good with it, I'm ready to start scheduling in-person meetings.
I am too, although what date? Wasn't it the 15th the governor was going to do something?
June 15th. Yeah, I'm looking at that too, Leo. It was an email that Ann Goby sent out. Let me just pull it up again.
Well, isn't that when he's lifting the state of emergency?
Well, I think what it is that after June 15th, I don't believe we can do Zoom meetings anymore.
So I'm not aware of anything that would prevent us from going to in-person sooner than that though, right?
No, but I'm just saying, well, it does. The reason I bring it up is we were talking about the chairs meeting via Zoom meeting. I don't know if we can do that after the 15th, right?
Well, that meeting will happen prior to that date.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Yeah.
Okay, I've got the email from Ann Goby. The face covering order will be rescinded on May 29th. The end of the state of emergency will be on June 15th.
Right, but it says on the state of emergency, if you read it, it had something about the Zoom meetings. I saw it somewhere.
I'm looking at it also.
It might not have been this email, but it was something that said that the state of emergency allowed us to be able to meet via Zoom.
That makes sense.
So it makes me think that once that happens, we have to be live. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Is this it? Nope. Anyway, yeah, no, I don't know. Can you double check that, Brian?
I'm ready to go live on June 7th. I can double check.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for any meetings, we just need to, as a community.
Yeah, I'll find out. I'll check with Board of Health and whatnot, but I'm ready for everyone. Committee meetings, all meetings, go back to the usual.
Yeah, check that out. Let's see where we are with that. I was kind of hoping to do my bylaw review committee meetings over Zoom, so we'll have to see what the answer is on that. But so check that out. So let's plan to go in person on June 7th at the Public Safety Building. And then the last bit of other business that I had was, I just wanted to go on the record and say that we received an email correspondence this morning from Lindsay Butler. And it simply is, we received an email correspondence from Lindsay Butler this morning. That correspondence covered a number of topics not on tonight's agenda. The correspondence has been noted and filed. And next up is reminders, and I'll push that over to Rosemarie.
Oh, you had to ask me, I'm looking something up. The next select board meeting will be Monday, June 7th, 2021 at 6:30 PM. And that we've decided is going to be at the Public Safety Building.
Boy, did you get out of the announcements easy.
Yeah, I know.
The last guy that did them used to have a whole list.
It's only because she's traveling.
Oh.
We'll have more for her as time goes on.
Okay,
So with that, I would take one more motion.
and I will give it to you. I move that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Bill Johnson, yes.
Leo Jansen, yes?
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Great, folks. Thanks, everybody, for participating. Appreciate your efforts. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See
Good
you
night.
later.
Bye-bye.